Nancy Cordes at the United Center in Chicago, and welcome to a special Democratic National Convention edition of America Decides. Well, it's the fourth and final night, the big night of the Democratic National Convention. Just a little while ago, we saw Pink rehearsing ahead of her big performance tonight. And with 75 days until Election Day, Vice President Kamala Harris is going to take center stage tonight and officially accept her party's nomination for president, making history as the first black woman and the first South Asian woman to be nominated by a major party in the United States. Before we get to Harris's big speech, though, we're also going to hear from Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, his wife, former Congresswoman and gun violence survivor Gabby Giffords, and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, this state where the convention is happening. He's a Republican who broke with his party over impeaching former President Donald Trump in the wake of the January 6th attack. To discuss all of this and what we can expect, I'm joined now by my White House colleague, Weijia Jiang, who is here with me, and Finn Gomez, our political director, down near the floor. Welcome to both of you. Weijia, I will start with you. There was this unexpectedly emotional moment last night that was really the highlight of the night, I think, for a lot of Democrats, and it came when Governor Tim Walz was speaking about his family. Let's take a listen.
Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you. I'm letting you in on how we started a family, because this is a big part about what this election is about. Freedom.
So that was the governor's son, Gus, who we saw there tearing up, obviously extremely proud of his father. And I spoke to someone close to Governor Walz today who said that the family is overwhelmed, but also overjoyed by all the support and love that they've been getting online, and that Gus in particular has been getting online.
Well, you know, Nancy, you and I, in doing our research about Governor Walz, watched a lot of videos of him and his daughter, Hope. And she had sort of broken out as this star in the family because she trolls her father in a funny way. But you're absolutely right. Last night was all about Gus Walz. And it just goes to show that when you're trying to tell somebody's story, you can have a perfectly curated list of guests. But this was an unscripted moment, and it really resonated with people as Walz was trying to share with them what he was like as a father, what he was like as a coach, as a former teacher. And I think that speaks volumes about, you know, the way that he was raised, as an example. And, you know, his parents have been very open about talking about his nonverbal learning disabilities, about his ADHD. So it was a real triumph for Gus to be able to open up that way. And I don't think that he could have controlled it. And so many parents, I think, resonated with that moment. But it was, I think, probably the highlight of the night for so many people, because it captured, again, this family dynamic. It allowed us to see the Walz family.
Right. I mean, when you're trying to tell the American people who you are and trying to get them to trust you, there's no better way, perhaps, than showing them that your family really likes you.
Exactly.
Finn, I want to go to you because the expectations for Kamala Harris now are really sky high, not only because we have seen so many over-the-top speeches over the course of this week from the Obamas, from Hillary Clinton, last night from Governor Walz, but because speaker after speaker over the past 3 days has been insisting that she is filled with joy, and now the pressure is on to display that joy to the country tonight.
Yeah, that's right, Nancy. But it's not just joy. I mean, there's another word that I've been hearing around this convention before, and that has been hope. There's also been an expectation of optimism, right? There's a sense of a high road strategy the Vice President Harris is taking, in contrast to what Democrats here are saying is a much more darker tone, much more darker tenor that is emanating from the Trump campaign. There's a stark difference that they feel, delegates here that speak to feel, that she can really showcase. And that is what they're trying to showcase. Not only that, but also like this hopeful and optimistic expectation of what her agenda is, in contrast to former President Trump's.
You know, Weija, one of the main goals of a convention, besides defining your own candidate and building them up, is to define the opposition. And last night, Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, talked about former President Trump like he was one person in a bad relationship. Take a listen to the way he put it.
Donald Trump is like an old boyfriend who you broke up with, but he just won't go away. He has spent the last 4 years spinning the block, trying to get back into a relationship with the American people. Bro, we broke up with you for a reason.
So Democrats are having some fun with coming up with new ways to criticize Donald Trump.
And new ways to reach out to those younger voters, right? I mean, I think the campaign really had to tweak the lingo when it realized it had a different kind of momentum and energy with this candidate compared to Joe Biden. So we saw from the very get-go, Kamala is brat. We have seen so many memes of her on social media because they really want to connect with those youthful voters because they matter. These are a whole new crop of voters who could not vote 4 years ago, maybe weren't paying attention 8 years ago. And so I think anytime that you can have that conversation in that kind of way, it's really meaningful. And so not only are they relying on people to speak like that about the vice president who have worked with her, but tonight we will hear from her sister. And I wanted to mention that because it's the first time that we will hear from someone who's really close to her. We know that family is so important to her. She, you know, talks about her sister a lot. I just saw Maya Harris backstage and she was beaming and she was laughing and she looked quite excited. So I'll also be watching for how she frames, you know, what her sister can do compared to the former president.
Her sister and her brother-in-law very involved with the campaign itself as they were in 2019 rather. Finn, I want to ask you about something I was told by the campaign today. They say that yesterday, once again, was their biggest grassroots fundraising day ever, I suppose, off the strength of Governor Tim Walz's speech. I've lost track of how many times they've said, no, this was the biggest fundraising day. But explain why that matters. How does that translate into energy, into volunteering, and ultimately into votes?
Look, we have 75 days left from here until the November 5th election, Nancy. One of the indicators, clear indicators of how well a campaign is doing is fundraising. And their fundraising has been through the roof. It's been historic in nature, what we've seen in the past month, in the last 24 hours. And what the campaign has told us is that, you know, this sort of turbocharged effort indicates that the momentum is on their side. And that, yes, the convention is happening. There's a lot of focus on her. There's a lot of focus on her campaign right now, you know, on purpose. But, you know, but there is a true sort of seismic change that we have seen on that front in the last month. I mean, you know, this is my 5th presidential cycle that I've covered. And you just do not, it's a rare thing to see. To see that in such a truncated amount of time, to see that much money raised, and you know, and again, it shows that it's an indicator of where the momentum lies with just 2.5 months until the election.
Right, and certainly the candidate who has the most money doesn't always win, but it does give you lots of options when you've got a lot of cash in the bank. Finn Gomez, Weija Jiang, thanks so much for setting up what will be the biggest night here at the Democratic National Convention. We'll talk to you in a little bit.
Great to see you.
Tonight I ask for your partnership, for your support, and I am humbly asking for your vote.
That was former President Trump accepting his party's nomination back in July. Tonight, as we've been discussing, it is Kamala Harris's turn. Coming up, what exactly we can expect from her speech. We've got some details. You're streaming America Decides.
In the name of the hardworking Americans who make up our forgotten middle class, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States of America.
Vice President Kamala Harris will be accepting the nomination from the Democratic Party for real tonight, officially, but this time for the presidency. Here to discuss this upcoming speech with me and more is Quentin Fulks. He is the Principal Deputy Campaign Manager for the Harris-Walz campaign. Quentin, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
So we haven't seen Vice President Harris in public since Tuesday night. What has she been doing today as she prepares for the biggest speech of her political life?
She's been putting finishing touches on that speech and honestly relaxing with her friends and family before this moment, making sure that, all the final preparations are done. But she's enjoying today and she's super excited for tonight.
What is the number one thing that she wants to accomplish with this speech?
I think she's going to continue to introduce herself to the nation, but I think most importantly, this is about our future. And I think what she wants to get across is her vision for this country moving forward. And, contrast that to Donald Trump and the plans that he has for this country. So I would say definitely a forward-looking vision for the country.
Obviously, Governor Walz was the main attraction last night, and his speech was well received here in the arena. It brought the house down. But there has been this outpouring today for Gus Walz. Yeah. And I'm wondering how the campaign has reacted to that, the fact that there has been so much support for this unscripted moment of tenderness between a son and his father.
Well, look, I think that Gus Walz and Governor Walz and the Walz family, they know who they are. And they really do embody the American family, the typical family that's out there. And I think that that authenticity comes through. And I think that that's how you would expect to see a family react on a stage like last night with Governor Walz, accepting the nomination for the vice presidency of the United States. And so we wholeheartedly embrace that. But that's who they've been from the moment Governor Walz joined the ticket. And so it was great to see that outpouring of support for the family today.
There have been dozens of speakers on that stage behind us over the past 3 days, more tonight. But one speaker we haven't seen is anyone who is Palestinian. And there are so many progressive groups who have been pushing for that. The United Auto Workers joined those groups today. They put out a statement saying that if we want the war in Gaza to end, we can't put our heads in the sand or ignore the voices of the Palestinian Americans in the Democratic Party. Why is the campaign, why is the DNC continuing to hold the line on this?
Look, I don't think that, we're holding a line or ignoring anybody. I think that Vice President Harris has been very clear on her position when it comes to this. And there have been several speakers throughout this convention that have been on stage talking about the need for the hostages to be released, talking about the need for a ceasefire, talking about the need to end the reckless and dangerous, killing of civilians. And I think that those views have been represented throughout this. And so we're going to continue to do that. The vice president is going to continue to listen to these voters. We're not shutting anybody out, but we understand both sides of this. And this is something that both she and President Biden are working tirelessly to bring to a close. And I think she's been very clear on that.
But if you have so many groups saying, we just want to be able to hear from a Palestinian American, why not say, okay, why not give that person 3 minutes to represent their community?
Well, look, I think, again, the issue that these voters want to hear and that these people are addressing that they want to hear has been talked about from a number of speakers on stage. And we've also hosted panels. The DNC has hosted panels for both the Jewish community, the Muslim American community. And we have also made a spot available to host visuals for the victims lost. And so I think that it is being represented throughout this convention.
Often after a big convention speech, the presidential nominee hits the road to kind of take advantage of the momentum that they have coming out of a convention. The vice president is heading back to Washington, D.C. For a couple of days with her family. Why did you make that decision not to send her out, for example, to barnstorm a bunch of battleground states this weekend?
Well, look, I think she's just going to have a day or so, but I think you should stay tuned for some other plans that are coming. But I think we'll be out there very soon.
Well, that's very intriguing. You can't just tease us with that and not tell us more.
Nothing to share now, but I can assure you that the vice president is going to be out on the road very soon.
The vice president is not only accepting her party's nomination tonight, she's also celebrating her 10-year anniversary. And she and her husband, the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, both wished each other happy anniversary today. Obviously, there's not going to be a lot of time for a date night tonight, but do they have any other plans to celebrate that you know of?
I'll leave that to them. I think they deserve a little bit of privacy in their relationship, but I think they would enjoy celebrating it like this tonight. And I bet I haven't spoken to the second gentleman, but I can imagine that there is not a better date that he could have planned for his wife than what she's going to receive tonight.
Are we going to hear Harris speak a lot about her opponent? Will we come away from this speech feeling that she has defined him in a new way, in a different way?
Look, I think that what you're going to hear from her in the tidbits that she does mention and reference her opponent is going to be contrasting with her vision of the future. Because at the end of the day, this race is a fundamental choice between two different visions. One under Vice President Harris's leadership as President of the United States, where we're going to have more freedoms and not less. One where we're going to continue to lower costs. One where we're going to stand up for women. One where we're going to protect people, and one where we're building an economy that everybody has a chance not to just get by, but to get ahead. And on the other side, you have Donald Trump and J.D. Vance with a Stream Project 2025 agenda. And I think that the Vice President is going to make that very clear in her remarks tonight.
We heard that former President Clinton kind of ripped up his remarks and started over after watching some of the speeches here because they were so upbeat and so joyous and fun, and he wanted to try to reflect the moment. Has the Vice President had an experience like that as well, where she saw what was going on here over the first couple of days and said, you know, I kind of want to tweak what I was planning to say to fit the theme?
No. This is her show. But as I mentioned, she is putting some finishing touches on the speech. I know this is something that's really important to her, but she knows exactly what she wants to say to the American people, and that's why she is the best person to represent this party as President of the United States. And so I'm super excited to hear what she has to say.
Well, so are we. Quentin Fulks, thank you so much for joining me from the Harris campaign. I know you've had a busy day and a busy week here at the convention.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Donald Trump could be joined by another presidential candidate tomorrow in Arizona. Coming up, the potential RFK Jr. endorsement and what it could mean for the campaign, for both campaigns, really. You're streaming America Decides. Stick around.
For all those who believe that our best days are ahead of us, with great faith in the American people, I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Several sources are telling CBS News that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is considering ending his presidential campaign. His running mate, Nicole Shanahan, has said that Kennedy, who is addressing the country tomorrow, is contemplating throwing his support behind Donald Trump. I want to bring in Trump campaign senior advisor Danielle Alvarez now to discuss this. Danielle, it's good to see you. So CBS News has confirmed that independent candidate RFK Jr. is strongly considering dropping out, endorsing Donald Trump. Is your campaign engaged in any conversations with him about that decision or about any kind of role for him in a Trump administration?
Well, that decision will certainly be RFK's, but I will echo what President Trump has said in that we would love the support of RFK if he chooses to back President Trump. I mean, the reality is that President Trump has brought together a very diverse coalition because of his record, his 4 years in the White House, and because of the policy promises that he is making in order to secure a second term.
But is there any discussion going on right now between your campaign and Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Because we know that he has spoken to your campaign in the past and has tried to speak to the Harris campaign about trying to secure some kind of cabinet post in exchange for him dropping out.
As was discussed during the Republican National Convention and as was tweeted, he has reached out to our campaign in the past, but at this moment, the decision will be with him on the future of his campaign, as well as if he puts his support behind President Trump. And so I would have to direct you over to the RFK camp. What I can say about the Trump campaign is that we would welcome his support because we welcome a very broad coalition of individuals to join President Trump's MAGA movement.
Okay, I want to ask you about something President Trump wrote last night that's getting a lot of attention. He posted that, quote, the highly overrated Jewish governor of Pennsylvania made a really bad and poorly delivered speech. Now, Governor Shapiro was asked about this morning. He said that Trump is obsessed with him. He said that Trump keeps peddling anti-Semitic tropes. Why did Mr. Trump bring up Shapiro's religion like that?
Well, I don't believe that it was anti-Semitic. I think it was a commentary on the speech that Governor Shapiro made. And it's really a commentary on the entire DNC. I mean, it's been a disaster. They've spoken very vaguely. They've had very vague themes all throughout the night. And basically, the only message that you're hearing from the DNC is, well, we're not them. You're right. You are not President Trump, who delivered a humming economy, who had low prices, who had a secure border, who had peace through strength at home and abroad. And so they have no message to deliver to the American people, and that's to be expected. If they can't govern and run a White House for 3.5 years, how did we expect them to have a good convention? It's run over time. They have no policies to share with the American people. Kamala doesn't even have a policy tab on her website. And so it's just been an absolute disaster. And that's the commentary from the Trump campaign towards the DNC. It'd be really nice if she took some interviews, if she took some questions instead of some prepared teleprompter responses to really answer and dive deep into what she plans and what her values are as we head into November.
But Danielle, isn't it politics 101 that if Trump wants to win Pennsylvania, the biggest battleground state, why does he keep attacking the popular governor of Pennsylvania who is not on the Democratic ticket?
Sure, but I would also throw it back and say that Kamala Harris didn't choose the governor of Pennsylvania because she went radical and she went left and she went to Tim Walz. We're ahead in Pennsylvania. We have an incredible ground game. I encourage anybody watching to check out Trump Force 47 and join our team because we are up in the battleground states and we have the right message to win in Pennsylvania. It's that economic message about bringing back an economy, unleashing American energy, which Kamala Harris has been deeply against. Those are the items that President Trump is focused on that will help deliver us not just the nation, but the critical battleground state of Pennsylvania.
Danielle, we've heard from a number of Republican officials at this Democratic convention, all questioning Donald Trump's character. For example, here's a snippet from the former lieutenant governor of Georgia.
These days, our party acts more like a cult worshiping a felonious thug. Look, you don't have to agree with every policy position of Kamala Harris. I don't. But you do have to recognize her prosecutor mindset that understands right from wrong, good from evil.
So, Danielle, you contrast that with your convention last month, where all of the Republican former presidents, former first ladies, vice presidents didn't even show up. They stayed away. So how can you win if you cannot even hold on to folks who are within your own party?
We were an absolutely unified party at our Republican National Convention. President Trump had just survived a heinous assassination attempt. We were an absolutely united party. We prosecuted a message every single night about what voters care about, whether it was making America wealthy again and focusing on the economy, a night focusing on immigration, a night focusing on crime, a night focusing on national security. And what I would say is that Democrats have not prosecuted those same messages. They have not talked about policy positions during this convention. That is what voters care about. Again, I repeat, they have been absolutely vague. They're not willing to answer any questions. I challenge anybody to come on this network and deliver what Kamala Harris stands for. In fact, I challenge Kamala Harris or Tim Walz to do so, who have ascended the throne and have refused to take a single interview. It's absolutely appalling. And with 75 days left until the election, we deserve answers.
Well, actually, just spoke a few moments ago with a top official from the Harris campaign about her platform, and he discussed what she's running on and what she wants to achieve. But nevertheless, I have one more question for you. Mr. Trump, curiously, has been falsely claiming that Vice President Harris met with Vladimir Putin. He said it at a campaign event, then he said it on Fox News. It is not true. Why is he saying that?
I'm not familiar with those remarks, but what I can say is that Kamala Harris traveled to Germany and told Russia not to invade Ukraine, and several days later they did. She's not taken seriously on the world stage. She is not a serious leader. In fact, we're coming up on the anniversary of the failed Afghanistan withdrawal, which will take place on Monday the 26th, when 13 service members were tragically killed because of the Harris-Biden administration's failures. And Kamala Harris is on TV bragging about being the last person in the room. Let's not forget that additionally, she is the border czar who has been unable to end the crisis at our southern border. President Trump was there today with the families of slain victims of Kamala Harris's border bloodbath. And so Kamala Harris has been absolutely weak on the world stage. And I go back and point out that she was in Germany and told Russia not to invade Ukraine, and they did. Under her failures and her weak leadership, the world is unsafe. And we have to return to President Trump's strength.
Daniel Alvarez with the Trump campaign, joining us live from West Palm Beach, Florida. I appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This election is about protecting our democracy and securing our freedoms, including the right to affordable, quality health care.
That was New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham on Tuesday night addressing this convention. She's going to join me next here on America Decides. You're watching CBS News streaming. We'll be right back.
So, my friends, it is with humility, determination, and boundless confidence in America's promise that I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
They'll repeal the Affordable Care Act. They'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And they will ban abortion across this country with or without Congress. Here's the thing. It's an agenda nobody asked for.
That was Vice Presidential nominee Tim Walz knocking the Trump campaign on health care and reproductive rights last night. His fellow governor in New Mexico had a similar message on abortion during her speech at the convention earlier this week. And New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham joins us now. We heard a clip from your speech a couple of minutes ago. Talk to me about your fellow governor, good friend Tim Walz, giving that speech last night. Did you think it met the moment?
Oh, I think it not only met the moment, it, as he is like to do, exceeded all expectations and introduced himself as the guy, right? The neighbor, the friend, the leader, the executive that we all know. And it was delightful and so valuable to have the rest of America see what I see every day. And, you know, his whole meals program for schools, New Mexico's done the same thing, and we're doing scratch cooking. It is really important to see that governors and that folks just like that guy, Tim Walz, is worried about kids and their safety and their well-being every single day, and that's the America we should be investing in. That's the America to be proud of.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest applause lines of the night when he said, in Minnesota, we're not banning books, we're banning hunger. We were also talking a few minutes ago before we went on about that unscripted viral moment from Gus Walz, his son, who jumped up, applauded, had tears in his eyes, said, "That's my dad," when Governor Walz said how much he loves his family. And I'm wondering what that moment was like for you, standing there watching it, and also as someone who, like so many people, has a family member who has a learning disability.
It renewed my faith in humanity to see the love right here in person at the convention. and to see the connection between Gwen and Tim and Gus and Hope. And that's the relationship we have, you know, with my family and my daughter. And I looked over at my daughter, who's dealing with some, you know, learning issues in her family. And she's got big tears in her eyes. And, of course, I grew up with a sister that I talked about in my speech who died at 21, who was also severely disabled. You know, those memories are deep. And I loved seeing Tim's relationship in that way, and I loved seeing the overwhelming love in this room
and online.
That moment, and online. It was incredible. And I've never met Gus. I've met Hope many times.
Right.
Did you see Hope too?
She teared up too.
Panned, oh,
and she did the heart.
It was the unbelievable. This is an American family. These are the kinds of emotional connections that Americans need in this moment. And we got to see it genuinely play out organically last night.
If you have kids who like you, you know you're doing something right.
It is.
Right?
I get emotional thinking about what I saw and watching it over and over again, and it makes me in a good way. I feel good.
So you are the governor of a border state. President Trump was at the border today. He said that Harris was the worst border czar in history. Obviously, that's not exactly accurate.
He's the worst border czar in history.
Not the border czar. What do you make of his decision to go down to the border today and what he had to say?
Oh, clearly a political stunt, purposeful, trying to draw attention on the only issue I'm guessing now that they think they have left. Interestingly enough, you know, he didn't go to the New Mexico side. Look, New Mexicans want border security. Americans want border security. I want border security. And there's been a number of chances that Trump has actually destroyed, not just this last one with a bipartisan deal in the Senate that would have passed in the House that the president would have signed. He's continued. He wants this issue, and he doesn't tell the truth. Border crossings at an all-time low, right? We need the border agents. We need to make sure that we deal with the immigration aspects for asylum. We need visas on the front end. But yes, I want border. Who doesn't want fair, meaningful border security? So spend the money to do it. He won't let Congress do that. Shame on those Republicans. Shame on the House. I'm still really pissed about that.
They were really close.
They were really close. And so this political stunt is to try to distract Americans from what he cannot distract them for. This moment is going to be, I predict, so meaningful for so many so many voters, that there's nothing he can do to diminish what's going to happen tonight.
Obviously, tonight is the big night. It's Kamala Harris's big night. As a woman in power, I want to ask you about something that we've been witnessing this week, which is so many speakers talking about how Kamala Harris is filled with joy, that she is a joyous person. And something that has really struck me is that 5 or 10 years ago, it would have been risky to describe a woman like that because it would have seemed too frivolous and
too feminine. We have to be tough. Right.
So have you felt that shift as well? Do you think things have changed for you in the year since you first went to Congress and then, you know, you were on the public stage?
Well, since I first ran for office in my mid-50s and I went from zero to running for Congress, and I didn't win that election, I can tell you that, you know, women political consultants told me not to be genuine, to be someone else, to not wear 6-inch stilettos and any number of silly things because they were worried about that imagery for a female woman candidate. So that has been shifting. I think the women governors and so many women executives and leaders and so many women being elected to so many offices around the country have really shifted that. But having the soon-to-be chief executive and leader of the free world, that happiness is a virtue and an asset. And in fact, when people are happy and can smile and grin, you can get to collaboration a lot quicker than when you're dealing with anger. And frankly, there's too much anger in the world. And when there's that kind of anger, people get hurt. People lose their lives. I think she is meeting this moment where we need those shifts, and she is unafraid, courageous, and owning it, and it is resonating. And it resonates with me because you know, I started working in the 80s. It wasn't like that. 90s wasn't that much fun, 2000s. But I feel like I get to be my genuine self in this job every day. I deliver every day for New Mexicans, and they know who I am, and they know who I'm not, and they know that I'm human. And all of that is okay.
And now here you are in your stilettos.
And now here I am in my stilettos, by golly.
Governor, thank you so much for being with us. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham of the great state of New Mexico. Great to talk to you this evening.
This has been wonderful. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, from her upbringing by a working mother in a middle-class neighborhood to California's Attorney General, and now the first Black and South Asian female presidential nominee, we're going to tell you a little bit more about Kamala Harris's journey. Next, you're streaming America Decides live from Chicago on night 4 of the Democratic National Convention. Stick around.
Let me say first that I accept the nomination of the Democratic Party. I accept it without reservation and with only one obligation. The obligation to devote every effort of my mind and spirit to lead our party back to victory and our nation to greatness.
Welcome back to America Decides. Uncommitted delegates today held a sit-in outside the Democratic National Convention. Here's a look at protesters outside the United Center in Chicago earlier today. The demonstration was sparked after efforts for a Palestinian American to speak at the convention were rejected. Let's bring in our Aaron Navarro to discuss. Aaron, you've really been covering this movement, not just this week, but for months as people went to vote in primaries across the country. What are these protesters demanding, and why aren't they getting it?
Big picture is a ceasefire and arms embargo on Israel. But as it pertains to this week, they wanted the speaker about 2 to 5 minutes on the convention stage at some point this week. That's in part because there was a family of Israeli hostage held by Hamas. They said, that's great, that voice should be represented. So should the voices of those in Gaza. And that was the main argument they made.
And so why is the DNC holding back? Is it because they're concerned that whoever got on that stage might criticize the nominee, which is something we really haven't seen at this convention?
Yeah, we still haven't gotten a clear answer from the DNC. You had Quentin Folks from the Harris campaign on here earlier, and he pointed to some of their engagement with the uncommitted delegates, saying that they had panels related to Gaza here at the DNC, noting that their campaign manager, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, was in Michigan talking to Arab American and Jewish leaders. I asked one of the main uncommitted delegates why they've been told no. If he got an answer why, here's what he had to say.
We just want a Palestinian American speaker to speak from this stage.
Have they told you why no?
We just want a Palestinian American speaker to speak from this stage. If they want to call and tell me why no, they're welcome to do that. I want this to end. I'm tired. I want to go home. Just call and tell us that a Palestinian American speaker can speak from this stage. Call and tell us that this is the party where, if you're organizing for Palestinian rights, your voice won't be suppressed.
Now, the delegation has said they will be outside the United Center until 6 p.m. local, 7 p.m. Eastern. Remains to be seen what will happen after. But as you mentioned, the UAW has said there should be a speaker, AOC, so some congressional backup as well.
Right. And yet we are now on night 4. So if it doesn't happen tonight, it's not happening at all. Aaron Navarro, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Well, we're now just hours away from Kamala Harris becoming the first woman of color to officially accept a major party's nomination for President of the United States. But some of you may still be asking, who exactly is Kamala Harris and how did she get here? Well, our Nicole Killian has the answers for us from our Washington bureau. Nicole, it is great to see you. Many voters know that Harris was a prosecutor and a senator before becoming the vice president. But tell us a little bit more about her upbringing and how it shaped the trajectory of her career.
Well, I think it's something you'll likely hear about tonight from the vice president herself. She was born in Oakland, California, grew up in a neighborhood called Berkeley Flats. She was part of the second class or wave of students to help integrate Berkeley public schools. And so we talked to one of her old childhood friends, a woman by the name of Carol Porter, who rode with her on the bus as part of that class that was bused to a local elementary school. And, you know, she talked to us about the relationship that they had, about the impact that experience had on them growing up. And she also talked to me very personally about Kamala Harris's mother, Shamala, who was an immigrant from India, and the critical role that she played in the vice president's life. Take a listen.
Shamala was everything for Maya and Kamala. She was the core of their life. And she took them with her to work. She took them to protests with her. They were everything for her.
And so, of course, Maya being the vice president's sister, but, you know, her mother was a single mom, as you heard there, worked very hard to raise both Kamala and her sister. So, again, something that the vice president has leaned on throughout her career, talking about her mom, someone who was with her every step of the way until she passed in 2009.
Yeah, and we've heard some stories about her mom from the convention stage here over the past 3 days. Nicole, you also spoke with one of Harris's former mentors who once had a romantic relationship with her. We've heard about this from time to time, but tell us what he told you about Kamala Harris.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we also sat down with former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown, who also served as the Speaker of the California Assembly and was pretty much a kingmaker, if you will, in California politics. This is someone who was very influential, particularly in the mid-90s, not only in terms of Kamala Harris's career as a mentor, but also people like Gavin Newsom, the now governor of California, Nancy Pelosi before she became Speaker of the House. So he did serve as a political mentor, and yes, their relationship was romantic for a period in time. So I asked him more specifically about the nature of that relationship. Here's what he had to say. How would you characterize that relationship?
It's a great friendship. Great friendship.
One that still exists?
Oh, yes.
When's the last time you've spoken with her?
It's been a long time. Been a very long time. And I miss that.
And what would you say to her now?
Don't stop. You're almost there.
So the former mayor certainly still has an affinity for the vice president, even though they haven't been in as close a contact. But he did talk to me about the significance of this moment, about her accepting the nomination and how she really broke a lot of barriers in California politics, also becoming the first woman of color to serve as San Francisco DA at a time where he says, you know, it really was an old boys network, you know, becoming Attorney General for the state of California in 2010. And then again, going on to become U.S. Senator. He said that she has a way with people, you know, that she is compassionate. She is someone who listens. And he thinks that is why she has been so successful in politics.
Now, you don't always get a peek inside the private life of a public figure like Kamala Harris. So it's really interesting, Nicole, to see those interviews with people who played a role that was pivotal in her past. Thank you so much for sharing those with us.
You bet.
And that does it for us for now. As we've been reporting, Vice President Kamala Harris will officially accept the Democratic presidential nomination tonight during her keynote address. CBS News special coverage of the Democratic National Convention will continue all evening long, and I'll be back at 7 Eastern. The Daily Report with John Dickerson is next.